Hey, everybody. Walter Crosby with Helix Sales Development, your host of Sales and Cigars. Today's guest is Rodney Miles. Rodney's he's got a company that helps you self-publish your book, and his objective is to help get more people to get a book out of them. And he believes that there's a book in people that have some experience, have been in the space for a while, own a business. You probably have something to say. But we talk about something that I didn't realize I was doing as I wrote my book, and that's gaining clarity. And we get into the details of that. So go grab a cigar, grab a cocktail, strap in for another educational and fun episode of Sales and Cigars. Thanks. So Rodney, welcome to Sales and Cigars. I appreciate you taking some time out of your schedule.
Thanks so much. I'm excited to be here.
You're in Florida in a little warmer conditions. Where I'm at, it's 17 degrees and snowy. And what do you got? What do you got in Florida?
I I don't want to offend anybody, but it's cold, which means it's low 70s.
Uh-huh. Does that mean you broke out the mittens and a parka?
The slippers and the sweatpants anyway. And your blood thins out down here, so 60s, 70s, 50s at night. It's chilly, but it's all relative.
Feel bad for you.
Yeah.
No empathy from my
tear.
So let me start with a question around: is there a book, Rodney, that you reread or gift a lot to people you know?
Yeah, it depends, but I would say there is an author I read.
Okay.
I would say Eric Larson is probably my favorite author. He writes narrative nonfiction, and I read a book called Dead Wake by him. So he relies on historical sources like journals and diaries and newspaper clippings and so on, and does kind of a investigative approach to tie the facts together. But then with diaries and other things, adds the context and makes it a narrative, so it reads like a novel. So Dead Wake was about the sinking of the Lusitania.
Oh.
And the big shots and the little people on that. But I think my favorite book of his is The Devil in the White City. It's about two storylines that run parallel in time. The Chicago Exposition of 1893 and the what was his name?
The guy that killed all those people in the hotel?
Yeah, he talks about that. And you feel like you're there, like watching him, how he handled the workers. And I can't believe I forgot his name. It happens to me on podcasts. But
yeah, I know who you're talking about. I could see his the image of him that they used.
Yeah.
Some people thought he was Jack the Ripper.
Yeah, that was a theory that he was Jack the Ripper. And America's first serial killer, they call him, or something like that. But that was, and actually, there's only one scene where their paths, where he goes to the fair, and but otherwise, it was a neat book. I like that genre a lot, and his writing it's brilliant. I think
it's interesting. I mean, you can learn a little something and have a little entertainment in terms of the style, and rely on the fact that he's actually doing his homework.
Yeah, when you said that, you reminded me. It's funny the scenes you remember, right? So there's a scene where he's riding a bike, an 1893 bicycle, and explaining how this was all the rage. And these were the bikes with the real big wheels.
Yeah, and a little one in the back.
Yeah. And he and his girlfriend, or the girl he was going to kill, I guess, were riding on this, it was called macadam or something like that. We would think of it as pavement now, but it was a kind of a stony substance that compressed as you flattened, and they used it in roads and sidewalks. But that sticks in my mind, and those little details kind of bring you there.
Okay, I like being turned on to new authors, and every once in a while, because I usually read something that's going to make me think about business. I like history, so Eric Lawson. I'm gonna check that out.
Yeah, great way to do both. escape from other stuff and learn. And it's like when it's done well, it's like time travel. You're there.
Yeah, the good novels, that's where they do. They take you back. Um,
Yes.
because our imagination is, unlike social media, our imagination allows us to create the image in our mind. Um,
Yeah.
we're, 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 we're going through whatever that image, the words are, we're creating that image for ourselves. It's a little more, um, I don't know, stimulating. In my opinion.
That's such a great point because you and I, leading up to this, have had a couple of conversations, and one of the neat things is going through the process of writing a book. And you reminded me when I wrote my book about self-publishing. I put everything down for a moment and thought about well, why books. Are books are gonna survive all in all forms moving forward. But I really had to think about it, and I wrote about it a little, and that's the number one thing I came up with: how it's different than other media. A film provides the visual, and other medium provide visuals, and but a book doesn't. So it forces you to engage your imagination, and
Yeah,
I think it's stimulating. I think it's self improvement just by reading anything.
yeah. It takes. I mean, it takes you on a journey that's being guided, but you're filling in the blanks.
Yeah,
You're coloring and you're putting the color in
yeah,
uh, to the piece. I love that too. One of the goals of this podcast for me is to have fun and learn something, and I just learned something I'm going to go check out. Um,
cool.
so, talk a little bit about your journey to. We're going to get into what you do, but talk a little bit about your journey to getting into the helping people publish books.
Sure. I actually left college with about a year to go from my bachelor's because I realized what wanted to do wasn't hard science. I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I wanted my own business, and through I guess I became a serial entrepreneur. I had little sales businesses, little always small businesses, little home renovation
Mhm.
businesses of a kind or two. I finally landed, I guess, in my 30s in real estate as a agent and then a broker. Managed an office, um, which was one of the for me one of the highlights of my professional career. A year or two there, managing the office, and maybe a little stupidly, I kind of let some of the $1 million sales slip by because I enjoyed working in the office so much, and it didn't make sense on paper. But in Florida here, especially when the bubble burst, 2007, 2008, I had a couple offices going. I had property management and sales, and it all went belly up. And I had to make a choice: either get back into that business, which I loved. I did love it, but a lot of people didn't. A lot of people were in it for the opportunity, but houses can't increase 20% every year for terribly long. And that bubble burst. But it was an opportunity at the age of, I guess I was 40, 39 or 40. And I always loved books. I'm a bibliophile. I always liked write. Even when I was in other things, I would write articles and so on.
Sure.
And my dad pushed me to a freelance website, and I started writing, ghostwriting for a penny a word, immersed myself in it, and just loved every aspect of it. Couldn't learn quick enough. And 15 years later, it's still what I do, and it's uh, in a way what I'll do for the rest of my life: write books, publish books, and help other people do that as on their own, as self-published, independently published people.
It's kind of cool when we find something that we can earn a living at, have some passion about, and we really truly enjoy.
Yeah, it makes all the difference. And I knew coming in that this is it. I love this. So I've always been very careful not to commit any sins against it, if you know what I mean.
Hmm.
Even if you take a shortcut or do something you're not proud of, and you're starting, it's the beginning of your demise in whatever that field is.
Yeah, I mean, you can get away with it once for like, I got to do this now because I need it. But if you do more than that, no matter what it is, you do something for the money. It's a it's a real steep hill that you you roll down. Um,
Yes. Yeah, it is.
and it always comes back and bites you in the ass. It's funny. I was talking to my daughter earlier today, who's you know just graduated college, took a job. She was made a promise something was going to happen. That promise didn't occur the way they promised. In fact, it was a complete and utter falsehood. Um, so instead of taking this as a 22-year-old, instead of taking this, screw you, I'm going to go, I'm going to leave and I'm going to go do something else. She took a minute to pause and reflect and started looking for other opportunities. And she's found a way to not burn bridges, get into something that she really likes to do and test it out. And now she's got lots of little opportunities to go. She's still making all the money she needs and you know, going back to a world that she really is passionate about. And it's, I got lucky, 10 years ago to start my agency because, I have the same belief that Alex Hermosi has where screw you about life balance. This is about, if you really enjoy what you're doing, then you're not working. It's fun.
Yeah.
Um, and, if you're not, if you're worried about the punching that clock, you're probably not doing the thing that you really should be doing and you have passion about. Um, so actually wrote a post about that on LinkedIn today. Um,
That's
I think that's important. Like you sometimes you're forced into it. You got forced into it and made a conscious choice.
yeah. I think I don't know that I would have made the choice if I wasn't 40, if that makes any sense. In fact, I went back to college for half a year at 40, and as an undergrad.
For the girls or for the women?
No, my wife made it clear. It wasn't reliving my youth. It was for certain opportunities. I tell you what, though, you appreciate those classes when you're 40 more than you do when you're 19, and
Well,
got a lot of things out of that few
we appreciate
semesters.
we appreciate a lot of things more at 40 than we did at 19.
Yeah,
It's just
I guess it's true.
uh, so one of the things that we talked about that I think there's really three threads that we want to pull here. Um, that we both had the belief that most entrepreneurs, most people that's run a business, most people that's been out there, even been in a sort of a high level person in a field for a while, there's probably a book inside of you,
Hmm.
and there's a reason to get it out, and you've got a cool take on that. And then I want to get to how you help people do it, but um, the one thing that you said to me when we had our initial conversation, it kind of struck a chord, and I didn't realize it because I wrote a book, um, and I had a purpose for it. It wasn't to be a New York Times bestseller; it was to be helpful and to kind of make me feel like I got this out of me, and it was more of a marketing thing. But can you share that thought that we had there initially about what it actually does for somebody?
Yeah, thank you, because I love that thought, and just occurred to me one day. And by the way, just to touch on a couple of things, I found Alex Hormozy. I guess it's about a year ago, and it's relevant actually because that process is a healthy process too, to break your business or your offering down in the way he suggests, and it made a career difference for me. $1 million offers, that book.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, and you touched on. I meet a lot of people who don't think they have the expertise or a degree of humility. And I meant some the other way too, where uh,
Yeah,
with a
you got enough
vanity.
life. Yeah, they're doing it just because they want to show off or something.
Yeah, yeah. Um, but it was actually in a sales training capacity, which is kind of interesting, that I had this little realization. I was with a sales company and I hadn't wasn't interested in hiring or training, but I happened upon young couple that wanted to get into the company, and the boss, who was remote, told me, "Well, you train them this weekend." So I trained them, and through the weekend, gave them all kinds of tips and procedures and other kind of general sales approaches and tactics. At one point, we were driving out to get a bite or something, and his fiance turned around to me in the car, and they said, "You ought to write a book." And it was I kind of looked behind me, uh, and I realized like the whole weekend kind of replayed in my head, and I thought, yeah, I guess they're right. But that taught me most people really don't realize how much they know. You really don't realize how much or how well you know things until you're put in a position where you're trying to teach it, to a kid or as a class, or when you write a book, because that'll become one of your first problems. If you've got a lot of material, it's got to be developed. Um, and it's, I think, a valid point of encouragement that I like to share, because people generally, unless you're part of the 6% of narcissists out there, at least 94% who probably underestimate how much they have to offer by way of their stories and so on. So it's really important. And then to your larger point was really another great experience. I started off and I had some luck with a small publishing house, and we were crazy busy. That dissolved. The three partners separated, so I was free to go, and it was kind of timely because I started working with people, little like more of a mile deep and an inch wide, where I got to spend more time. It wasn't just a book we were cranking out. Um, and I worked with a woman named Cynthia Freeman. She had been a coach on a bus with Tony Robbins before he was Tony Robbins. She'd been a 25-year C-suite uh, coach and sales trainer,
Okay.
and she brought her method to our process. I was really maybe only a few years into what I do. Her method I call top down. She had a board with post-its. She had like 12 chapters mapped out, and she would think of something, and this was just her method. She put a little note in a post-it, put it up there, and had an outline and was filling it in. And I remember there was I don't know if delay is the right word, but she said, "Okay, wait a minute, I'm figuring something out here." And I realized she's refining this 25-year veteran is refining her process, realizing, assigning relative importances, figuring out better sequences. And it's happened to me actually right now. I'm working on a book. The guy who's brilliant in private equity, and he's got business strategies I've never been exposed to, and even he is through the process of writing a book. It's not just improving his process and being a very revealing, exciting time for him, I think, if the process is done right. And he's flexible in ways that make this possible to be such a good experience. But he's also coming up with IP. He's coming up with terminology. He's coming up with improved methodology.
Hmm.
He's His methodology in terms of steps, for example, has expanded and then contracted and become more efficient. It's also become more teachable because he understands he's doing this for a reason. He's presenting it in a way that people will be able to grasp it. And it's wonderful. I've seen that happen with memoirs the same exact way. When the process is done well and in a healthy way, you actually improve. The author improves. And if it's a memoir, just as a parallel, I've seen people have really nice catharses and uh, epiphanies about their own existence.
Well, but it's a I don't know that it becomes the reason you do the book, but it is definitely a an outcome that occurs. And I did not have that. I didn't realize I was doing that until we had that conversation.
Well,
And it because I didn't do the post-it note. I'm a
yeah,
whiteboard guy. So I had like all kinds of chicken scratch on whiteboards, and then I had stuff over here, and I was taping stuff like. But it's the process of like taking a step back and looking at what you've done, and is there a better way? Can I shorten it? Can I make it more? Can I add more value? Um, can I be more effective? Right? Because I'm looking for effectiveness and efficiencies in in a sales process. Let's just say I'm looking for it to be as optimized as possible for the particular situation. And when you're forced to start breaking down your ideas, whatever that is, you're literally breaking down your ideas to they become more clear, or you see where the cloudiness is and where
Yeah.
you got to go to work. So those moments were they were they weren't stalls as much as they were um, like, oh, that's a thing I got to fix. And the problem I had with that piece, right, the post-it note idea, is that I wanted to get it done, and I should have taken a little bit more time to focus on a couple of things. That's why I did a complete redo of the book.
Mm.
So because it was I didn't take the time in the moment.
Yeah.
It's sort of like you need to spend 10 minutes on getting that ready, and that'll save you 2 hours of later of redoing it. Measure twice, cut once. It's that same principle. Comes back.
Yeah, absolutely is. And you find your own process, right? Everybody's got slightly different process, probably, whether that's whiteboard or post-its or there's another method I kind of discovered as a young ghostwriter that I called the spring method, because you start with something and as you start to research, it just starts leading to other things. It's like water bubbling out of the ground, like a bottom-up approach. Um, yeah, and when you lay it out and break it down, there's something remarkable about it. And you're right. I don't know anyone who would maybe take on a book project just for that alone. But I realized at some point in my career, I've seen this happen time and time again when the process is done well. I don't see any of my sort of competition because until recently, I thought I was the only one man show out there doing what I do. There are companies that do it, they different types of publishers. But for example, you reminded me of a quote by Flannery O'Connor. She said, "I don't know what I'm going to butcher it, but I don't know what I think until I write about it." It's
But I mean, that's really the crux. Um, and it goes back to our original premise that if you've been doing something, or you've been in a space, you've been in an industry, you've been running a company, whatever that is, for a while, you have you have the makings, you have the intellectual property to write a book. You have credibility, you have experience, um, about the thing that you're
Mhm.
talking about. But it's something that I've never had anybody. I've had other people that are authors. I've had other people that talk about getting books written and such, but nobody's ever made that point. And I think it's almost a reason to do it, to help gain that clarity um, for for yourself, that's going to improve upon. And you might niche down, you might focus on one aspect of your business, you might be able to delegate more, whatever that is. But it's catharsis isn't the right word, metamorphosis isn't the right word, but there's a change that happens, and it's a positive change. and,
Yeah.
and you could and you could do this more than once.
Mm. Oh yeah. Yeah. It's like a refinement or a development.
Hmm.
Uh, it forces you. It might be comparable to, let's say you're going to teach a class for the first time, write a book. Um, and I actually think it's neat you brought up Alex Hormozy at the beginning of our chat here, because by applying that and breaking down, I realized there was value in what I was doing I wasn't aware of, and I broke the process down because I wanted to come up with an offer so good you feel stupid saying no. And I did that. I realized with somebody takes me up on the full thing. Other companies are charging $100,000 for a project like that. I don't need to charge anywhere near that. I can provide great value, but it got me to segment some of the things that I'd taken for granted that I do, which was a surprise, and break them out and assign a value. It got me to look at comparable value. Somebody who just does this part of the process, for example, what do they charge for that? And is what I do comparable to what they do? And if it is, I found value all over the place in my own offering as it was that I was unaware of. It was amazing.
If you're unaware of it, you don't talk about it. You're not able to. You don't necessarily have to put a price tag on it at the end of the day, but you do have to put a price tag on like what it is that you're doing, what that value is, because it's not just about dollars. Sometimes it's that emotional piece of it that you're getting somebody through. Sometimes it's just the technique, right? But his book, The $1 Million Offer, it does really force you, if you really sit down and do it. I mean, you you're forced to stand outside of yourself and look at what you're doing.
Yeah.
It's almost like um, you want to go to a hotel room with a writing desk and just lock yourself in there for a long weekend or a week and just boom, work
Yeah.
on that, on getting that done for that, for creating that offer. I mean, there's
Yeah.
people that can help you with that, but if you want to go faster, but I think it's the thinking part, that critical thinking is what drives that. And I'm glad we're able to talk about that, because an entrepreneur that's like, I don't really need to write a book. No, you don't need to write a book. And maybe you write the book and you never really publish it, which is probably silly. But the exercise, that's one of the greatest values of putting your thoughts on paper, digital or otherwise, to is to get that clarity. And it, I think it's worth the effort. Whether it takes you a year or 2 years or 8 weeks, doesn't matter. Um,
Yeah. That's
do it.
exactly right.
Yeah.
And
So,
I do think there are surprises, pleasant surprises along the way. I had a few myself when I finally wrote a book about self-publishing. I had things I didn't realize. Fabulous. It's a great process, and I guess it's generally a lengthier process. So if you're prepping for a weekend presentation or something, that forces you to do the same thing, maybe to a lesser degree. But a book project, any extended project, makes you pull it out by its roots, rearrange it, and it makes you better, whatever it is you do for it.
yeah,
It's very cool.
if you're a gardener, you're going to rip everything out, clean up the dirt, get it all nice and clean, and then start over.
And go back with everything you learned.
Right, and do it right the next time. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I mean, Rodney, what's the if somebody has interest or wants to further have a conversation with you, what's the best way for them to reach out to you, connect?
My website, www.rodneymiles.com. And I always keep it very simple. The website will lead you to anything else you might want to find out about, the services I might offer, or my book, um, even other books that have published that I'm proud of. That's a good hub.
It's a good place to go figure out who Rodney is, and how you might be able to help them, and get a conversation started. So, I mean,
Yeah.
if you've been around the block a couple of times, you probably have a book in you, and I think it's worth exploring, whether you do it now or at some point in the future. But I think there's a lot of extra value there that we don't realize.
Yeah.
So, last question, Rodney: past or present, any relationship with cigars?
Yes. And I'm going to light up my Romeo and Julieta here. As a matter of fact, and this has been fun for me. I haven't had a good cigar in a while, to be very honest. Um, I got into them. I always liked the idea, and I got into them on a job where there's a little cigar shop around the corner. And at
Oh,
lunch,
cool.
I'd go buy a little punch, Robustos.
Yep. It's actually going to light it on camera. That's awesome. Romeo and Julieta, you said?
Hmm. butchered it.
Oh, almost there. So tell me about the store around the office, the cigar store around the office.
They hand rolled them there, and they had a little selection of brand cigars, and just took to it. And now that I haven't thought, I didn't. I just remembered I actually smoked a few in high school. Uh,
Hmm.
I was driving one day on Federal Highway in Fort Lauderdale, and had a big stogie in my mouth. I must have been 16. The car next to me, I realized they were laughing like crazy, and I looked and it was a buddy of mine. He just thought I was an idiot, going down.
It-
And
it-
it, and I
so
had
when you started in high school, like, that's usually a bad place to start. You usually have a bad experience. Did you have a good experience with the cigar, other than your
I,
friends laughing at you?
I did, but I didn't get into fine cigars until I found those little robustos. Excuse me.
There's a. I used to smoke a lot of punches because of. At one point, they would have magazine ads that had the punch logo, right? Because punch was an actual character, but they had adopted that logo, and it was like the tagline was "idiot repellent."
I like it.
And it just it's happened so many times in my life where um, on a golf course, I've told this story a few times, but on a golf course, a lady walked about 50 yards over to the tee box where we were standing, and she's like, "Sir, your cigar's bothering me." And I was like taken aback, like, because she literally had to walk to
Yeah,
the tee
on a
box.
golf course.
Yeah. And she's like, "Your cigar's bothering me." And I'm like, "Well, that seems fair." And she, "Why is that fair?" I'm like, "Because you're bothering me."
Nice.
Um, and her husband or whoever he was came and collected her and said, "Why don't you just leave the nice man alone?" Um, we bought him a drink at the end when we got to the 19th hole, but that
Pretty
to me
cool.
is that punch ad always sticks in my head. Idiot repellent, because it keeps. I try to be respectful of people, but um, I'm on a golf course.
Yeah, and I mean this is natural.
Hmm?
I mean, you might not like the smell. It's not like I used to recommend it to friends who smoked. They're like, "Oh, I can't quit smoking." I said, "Start smoking cigars," and they'd look at me like, "What?" Like, first of all, it's $10 a stick. You're not going to go through a pack. You're not going to get all those chemicals. It's something to savor, something to relax you. And I
And you
think a
get your
couple of them took
nicotine
me up
fix
on.
if you want. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I've
Uh,
you're lighting one up now in the studio there. Is it a habit? Is it something that you do regularly? What's your
Not lately. So this was kind of exciting for me. It's been a while. When I used to smoke them a lot when I was in real estate, and I had some friends who, we'd go to cigar bars, and actually these matches are pretty old. They're from the Corona in Orlando,
hmm?
big cigar store there.
Love that place. Great steakhouse around the corner.
Yes, yes.
Cress.
Uh, Ruth Chris, you say?
Cress. K
Oh,
R E
Chris.
S.
Okay. Uh, yeah, and we were always taking a break at a cigar shop or a. Actually, I can remember there was a wonderful little steakhouse in Palm Harbor. It's got to be 20, 30 years ago, called St. Larry's.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, it was originally Dave and Bubba's, two guys that retired from Home Shopping Network and opened a little fine dining restaurant. But you could go and have a cigar and a steak, and it was really kind of fantastic. Glass of wine.
In the same
Um,
room. Yeah. Those are
yeah,
the old days.
yeah, it's the old days. They got stopped for a couple of reasons. It sounded too much like Dave and Buster's, I think, so they got pushed out of the name.
Yeah.
And of course, they stopped them from smoking cigars there, unfortunately.
Yeah. I mean, cigar. Florida is a friendly cigar state. Uh, we would go to Orlando a lot, and we'd go to Tampa a lot, and Ybor City is
Ybor
a good
City.
place. Long Ash Cigar. If you're ever in Ybor City, Long Ash Cigar. They roll their cigars. He blends them. He's got the whole spiel. He's got a little bar great place. Um, it's a. If you're listening, Michael, I hope that helps you because they got they got hit a little bit during the hurricane, but it's a great state as far as cigars go. Um, Lots
Yeah,
of places to get them, and lots of them rolled there. So I appreciate that.
I
Well,
guess you're right.
in
Ybor City, Miami. There's a lot of rollers end up here and end up doing that here, where you can see them through the plexiglass.
there's a few factories there still. I mean, most of the brand names are rolled in at factories in Honduras and Nicaragua and Dominican, but there's still places that are rolling in Tampa and Miami. Um, like I said, I love that. If you ever get over to Tampa, there's another cigar bar called the Cathedral.
Ooh,
It's an old church, literally an old church.
wow.
That the pews are gone. There's tables, big leather chairs, a bar, but the area at the top where the priest would do take care of the business,
Yep.
all of that is still there. So you're sitting in an old church, um, having a cocktail, having a cigar. Um, I don't know. It seems kind of appropriate. Um,
It is because it's relaxation. We were talking off air about those moments. You know, I think for me, it's taking a shower or taking a drive. You've got just enough activity, you can block everything else out. For some people, it's a tanning booth or whatever it is that gets you to not think all the time. Put your attention on the flavors and the atmosphere. And cigar bars are wonderful for that. That sounds amazing. It's called the Cathedral.
yeah, yeah. If you're ever over there, go check it out. It's easy to find. Um, Rodney, I appreciate you lighting one up. I appreciate the conversation. I think there's a lot of listeners out there that have a book in them. They just got to get it out on paper, and
Well,
it's really just it's a start. And I think you can help them think about it a little differently than what they might be today. So thank you much. Appreciate it.
thank you, Long Ashes.